Hey guys, so I have a big review coming up for a certain movie that I watch on HBO Max. I figure in the mix of my next big review project, I would do essentially what all other YouTubers who tackle movie related content tend to do, which is discuss newer releases. With a couple of new films set to come out soon, I figure it would be a good opportunity to talk about some of those other movies that I've seen recently and give you brief thoughts on them in the meantime of some of the other video projects I have in mind. So starting this new series of reviews where I potentially recommend something, I'm going to talk about Raya and the Last Dragon. Now, I was actually pretty excited for this movie. I, like many others, had Disney animation been a part of my childhood since birth, more or less. And I gotta be real, I really liked and loved a lot of what Disney animation had to offer in the past decade. After dealing with a down spiral of weaker animated films, they managed to do really well for themselves by giving people not only great animated movies that feel like they're older ones, but they also did a good job of updating their films to a new audience. Plus, when they do something like Raya and the Last Dragon, where it seems like it might be a different kind of Disney movie, with it being centered around action and adventure, it's always really interesting to see how it turns out, and even better when it turns out as good, if not better, than other Disney projects. So after a decade of great stuff in the mix, is Disney Animation's first film of the 2020s any good?
Yes.
Raya and the Last Dragon is a really admirable attempt at a big animated adventure film that has a lot that I love seeing Disney do. Right off the bat, this is another movie from Disney where they really want to show that they can essentially make their own version of Avatar: The Last Airbender. It might sound a little derivative, but to Disney's credit, this isn't a bad attempt at capitalizing on that franchise. What makes this movie stand out is how it managed to excel at being an action-adventure film that's not as kiddie as one would initially expect from a project like this. This is a project where the whole world is created with a lot of care and effort put into it. With this world having an interesting backstory on how different sanctions have been divided, and of course, it leads to our hero making an effort to restore that balance. Sounds typical in some ways, but Raya and the Last Dragon makes it work because they do establish this world really well. Not just through the neat backstory sequences that expand upon what each tribe is about, but we also get a personal connection with the rivalry between Raya and Namaari, which helps makes this conflict a little bit more interesting, especially with the dynamic we see these two characters face throughout the film. Another thing I will praise about this movie is, unsurprisingly, the visuals. I mean, it is Disney Animation, and they hire a lot of amazing, talented artists to make this world not only alive, but authentic to Asian culture, as this is another animated film that takes a more Asian fantasy world influence. It's some great stuff, with so many beautiful backgrounds, neat character design, and as I mentioned earlier, even changes its style at certain points. Finally, the other big thing I will praise about Raya and the Last Dragon is that it actually has a really good cast. I'm not really talking about the voice performances per se, although every actor here does a good job, and it's really nice to see Kelly Marie Tran in a movie that actually showcases more of her talent. Although, it's really the characters you remember in this movie more than the voice performances, because throughout the whole film you see Raya interact with a lot of different characters that all have really neat quirks to them, so much so that they actually join her team, and it's really awesome to see such a diverse and unique group of characters be a part of this ensemble cast. There's a fast talking street smart kid who's also a chef, this big warrior dude with an eye patch, and even a con artist team consisting of a baby and some monkeys. All of these characters are a lot of fun to watch, and I enjoy every little bit of them on screen. So yeah, Raya has a lot of great stuff going for it, but it does fall short on a few aspects for me. The main thing that comes to mind is that for as great as this cast of characters are, I wish there was a little bit more to them. We don't get a lot of screen time with these characters, which makes sense. This is Raya's story after all, and you want to maintain focus on her and everything. However, with the way these characters are set up, really made it seem like we were going to have a lot more of them teaming up and have them all get to know each other better while on this big grand adventure, but you don't really get much of that here. There's definitely stories for these characters, and Maybe if they did a sequel or a series of some sort, I could see them being fleshed out a little bit more. As for the movie itself, we're more regulated to it being focused on Raya and Sisu, more or less. It's one of those things where I like where they're going for these characters. I just wish the movie gave them some more time for us to really get attached to them. It's a similar issue I had with Big Hero 6, which ironically enough had one of the same directors of this movie. You introduce this really neat cast, and you see them easily making a good team-up movie with this cast, but it never goes that far with these characters outside the main two. Not to say that the main characters in the story are bad, but with all these other characters in the mix, you wish they can be a bigger part of the story than they already are. Though I guess I really shouldn't be talking about characters without mentioning the other big appeal of this movie, which is the Last Dragon herself, Sisu.
Have you ever done like a group project, but there's like that one kid who didn't pitch in as much, but still ended up with the same grade?
Now, I don't want to be that guy, because you've heard it. You hear complaints about Disney sidekicks all the time and how annoying they can be, whether they actually are or not. That's not to say that Sisu can't be a likable character, because I think she can be a pretty enjoyable character as the film goes on, and we see her relationship with Raya develop further, even if she does look like a furry worm version of Elsa. Though, for this particular character, I think they went too much on the route of wanting them to be the next big Disney sidekick. They make her style of talk more modern, and she cracks a lot of jokes to varying degrees of results. Which, yes, this is also Disney trying to make another Genie or Mushu again. However, it sticks out a bit worse here. Not because of the quality of the jokes, but I feel like compared to something like Mulan and Aladdin, Raya and the Last Dragon plays it more serious than those movies. It's trying to be more of an epic fantasy story rooted in ancient Asian mythology with a more emphasis on action and has no songs whatsoever. So when you have a character that cracks more modern style jokes, it kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. Not saying you couldn't have comedy in this. I mean, it is a Disney movie after all. You gotta have some levity. But maybe if it was written a little differently, or if Awkwafina played in a way where it didn't result in her being such a big, fast-talking sidekick so much, I think you would have had a better movie as a whole. Despite some of those flaws, I actually do recommend Raya and the Last Dragon. It's nicely placed, has some excellent visuals, a great cast of characters, and is a project from Disney where they go a little bit more ambitious by giving us something different than the typical animated musical. Sure, there have been attempts at films like this that were done better, but I've also seen worse attempts of this kind of film from Disney too. Thankfully, this coming decade seems to be a potentially more experimental era of Disney and Pixar animation, and what Disney has given us with Raya is a good start. So here's hoping that Disney Animation still gives us a ton of creative and fun projects in the 2020s as the years go on. So I guess I'll put a rating for this show too, so I'm gonna give Raya and the Last Dragon an 8 out of 10. It's good stuff.